Randy Orton just delivered one of the most ruthless attacks SmackDown has witnessed in months, and the entire WWE universe is still trying to process what happened. The Viper inserted himself into a war that was already reaching nuclear levels between Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre, but nobody expected him to strike with such venom and precision. What unfolded on that chaotic night has sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling world, and if you think you know everything about this story, you're about to discover details that will completely change your perspective. If you want to understand every single detail of this chaos and what it means for everyone involved, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're breaking down everything, and trust me when I say you don't want to miss a single word of what's coming. The night started with tensions so thick you could cut it with a knife. Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre were scheduled for a 3 stages of hell match, a contest designed to push both men to their absolute limits. This wasn't just another match on the card. This was personal. These two have been tearing into each other for weeks, trading wins and losses, verbal shots, and physical punishment. The WWE had built this encounter as the definitive answer to who truly had the upper hand in this rivalry. Fans packed the arena expecting violence, drama, and a clear winner by the end of the night. What they got was something entirely different, something that nobody could have predicted even in their wildest imagination. The atmosphere in the building was electric from the moment the doors opened. Fans were buzzing with anticipation, discussing their predictions, debating who would emerge victorious. Some believed Cody Rhodes had the mental edge after weeks of getting inside McIntyre's head. Others argued that Drew McIntyre's raw power and determination would be the deciding factor. The energy was infectious, spreading through every section of the arena as showtime approached. Social media was ablaze with fans sharing their excitement, creating countdown posts, and engaging in friendly arguments about the outcome. The first fall of the match showcased exactly why both Rhodes and McIntyre are considered elite competitors. They went back and forth with neither man gaining a significant advantage early on. McIntyre used his raw power to throw Rhodes around the ring, while Cody relied on his technical skills and ring awareness to counter. The action spilled to the outside multiple times, with both men using the steel steps, barricades, and announce tables as weapons within the rules of the first fall. Rhodes managed to secure the first pinfall after hitting his signature crossroads, giving him the early lead. The crowd erupted as the American Nightmare took control, but everyone knew McIntyre wouldn't go down without a fight. The commentary team sold the drama perfectly, their voices rising with each near fall and devastating move. They highlighted the history between these two competitors, reminding viewers of every insult exchanged, every cheap shot taken, every moment that led to this explosive encounter. The camera work captured every grimace of pain, every flash of determination in their eyes, every drop of sweat that flew through the air with each impact. This was storytelling at its finest, a physical chess match between two masters of their craft. The second fall changed the entire dynamic in ways nobody anticipated. McIntyre came out with a renewed intensity that bordered on desperation. He needed to even the score, and he wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. The Scottish Warrior unleashed a series of devastating strikes that had Rhodes reeling backward, struggling to maintain his balance. McIntyre's eyes had changed, showing a darker side that fans don't always see from the normally confident competitor. He was digging into reserves of aggression that he typically keeps locked away, pulling out every bit of fury and frustration from weeks of buildup. The strikes came fast and furious, each one landing with brutal precision. McIntyre backed Rhodes into the corner and unleashed a barrage of punches that forced the referee to consider intervening. But this was 3 stages of hell, a match type that allows for more physicality than standard contests. The rules were more lenient, the tolerance for violence much higher. McIntyre took full advantage, pummeling Rhodes until the American Nightmare's legs buckled. The crowd gasped as Cody slumped in the corner, looking vulnerable for the first time all night. McIntyre pulled Rhodes to his feet only to lift him high in the air for a devastating slam that shook the entire ring. The impact echoed through the arena, a sickening thud that made fans in the front row wince. But the Scottish Warrior wasn't finished. He dragged Rhodes to the center of the ring, positioning him perfectly. McIntyre then retreated to the corner, his chest heaving with exertion, his eyes locked on his target. The crowd knew what was coming. They rose to their feet in anticipation. McIntyre charged forward with frightening speed for a man his size. His boot connected with Rhodes' jaw in a claymore kick that nearly took Cody's head off his shoulders. The American Nightmare's body went limp, crashing to the canvas like a felled tree. McIntyre covered him immediately, hooking both legs with authority. The referee's hand slapped the mat 3 times and the arena exploded with noise. The match was tied at 1 fall each, and suddenly all the momentum had shifted to the Scottish Warrior. The crowd was split down the middle now, with chants for both competitors echoing through the building. This is what 3 stages of hell is all about, pushing both men to their breaking point and forcing them to dig deeper than they ever have before. The fans were getting exactly what they paid to see, a back-and-forth war where either man could claim victory at any moment. The unpredictability made every second essential viewing. As the third and final fall began, both men were visibly exhausted. Their movements were slower, their strikes less crisp, but their determination remained unshaken. Rhodes and McIntyre exchanged blows in the center of the ring, each shot landing with sickening impact. Neither man was willing to back down, neither willing to show weakness. Their bodies were screaming for rest, but their hearts wouldn't allow it. This was about pride, about proving who was truly better, about settling a rivalry that had consumed both of them for weeks. The crowd was on their feet, fully invested in seeing who would claim victory. Phones were up recording every moment, capturing the drama for those watching at home or unable to attend. The energy in the building had reached a crescendo, a level of excitement that only happens during the most special matches. Commentary was nearly drowned out by the crowd noise, their voices barely audible over the thunderous reactions to each exchange. McIntyre set up for another claymore, but Rhodes dodged at the last second, causing the Scottish Warrior to crash into the turnbuckle with full force. The impact stunned McIntyre, leaving him dazed and vulnerable in the corner. Cody seized the opportunity, knowing this might be his only chance to put the match away. He grabbed McIntyre and went for another crossroads, but the Scottish Warrior's instincts kicked in. Despite his exhaustion and disorientation, McIntyre countered the move, showing the ring awareness that separates good wrestlers from great ones. The counter left both men sprawling on the canvas, their bodies tangled together from the exchange. The referee began his count, reaching 5, then 6, then 7 before both competitors showed signs of movement. They crawled toward opposite ropes, using the cables to pull themselves upright. Their legs were shaking, their breathing labored, sweat dripping from their faces in rivers. This was the moment of truth, the final push that would determine who walked away victorious. That's when the music hit. Randy Orton's theme song blared through the speakers and the entire arena lost its collective mind. The reaction was instantaneous and deafening, a mixture of shock, excitement, and confusion that created a wall of sound unlike anything heard all night. The Viper made his way down the ramp with that calculated, predatory walk that has defined his career for over 2 decades. His eyes were locked on the ring, specifically on Drew McIntyre, with an intensity that promised violence. Orton had been absent from television for a few weeks, and speculation had been running wild about when he would return and who he would target. Rumors had circulated about injuries, about backstage disagreements, about potential retirements. But none of that mattered now because the Viper was back and he had chosen this moment, this match, to make his presence felt. Now everyone had their answer about where Randy Orton had been and what he'd been planning during his time away. The referee tried to restore order, stepping between Orton and the ring, attempting to prevent interference in an already chaotic situation. But Orton wasn't interested in following any rules tonight. He brushed past the official with barely a glance, his focus entirely on the target he'd come for. The referee's protests fell on deaf ears as the Viper stalked toward the ring with murderous intent radiating from every step. Orton slid into the ring and immediately went after McIntyre. The Scottish Warrior tried to defend himself, but he was already worn down from the brutal match with Rhodes, his tank nearly empty after 2 grueling falls. McIntyre threw wild punches that lacked the precision and power from earlier in the night. Orton easily evaded them, his fresh legs giving him a massive advantage. The Viper struck with precision, targeting McIntyre's head and neck with calculated strikes that had been perfected over years of inflicting punishment on opponents. He wasn't here to send a message with words. He was here to send a message with violence, the kind of message that Randy Orton has delivered throughout his legendary career. Every strike was intentional, every movement purposeful. This wasn't a random attack born from momentary anger. This was premeditated, planned, executed with the cold efficiency of a professional assassin. Orton had waited for the perfect moment when McIntyre would be at his most vulnerable, and that moment was now. Rhodes watched from the corner, clearly caught off guard by Orton's sudden appearance but smart enough not to get in the Viper's way when he's in full attack mode. Cody's expression showed a mixture of emotions, confusion about what was happening, concern for his opponent despite their rivalry, and perhaps a touch of relief that Orton's focus wasn't on him. The American Nightmare stayed in his corner, observing, calculating, trying to understand what this meant for him and his own future. The assault continued as Orton delivered a series of stomps to every part of McIntyre's body. He stomped on McIntyre's hand, his arm, his chest, his legs, systematically breaking down the Scottish Warrior piece by piece. The methodical destruction was vintage Randy Orton, the kind of calculated brutality that has made him one of the most feared competitors in WWE history for over 20 years. Each stomp landed with precision, targeting specific body parts that would maximize pain and damage. McIntyre tried to fight back, summoning reserves of strength from somewhere deep inside. He landed a few shots of his own, catching Orton with a hard right hand that snapped the Viper's head back. For a moment it seemed like the Scottish Warrior might mount a comeback despite the odds stacked against him. The crowd rallied behind McIntyre, their cheers providing fuel for his resistance. But Orton was relentless, absorbing the punishment and responding with even more vicious attacks. He grabbed McIntyre by the head and dragged him to his feet only to slam him face first into the top turnbuckle. McIntyre's head bounced off the padding with a sickening thud. Orton then spun him around and delivered a European uppercut that sent the Scottish Warrior stumbling backward. The Viper stayed on him, not allowing any space or time to recover. This was a masterclass in domination, a veteran showing a younger star exactly how ruthless this business can be. Orton grabbed McIntyre and planted him with a devastating DDT that spiked the Scottish Warrior's head into the canvas with frightening force. The impact was brutal, the kind that makes viewers at home cringe and look away. McIntyre's body went rigid for a moment before going completely limp, a ragdoll sprawled on the mat. The crowd was roaring now, some cheering for Orton's return and the intensity he brought, while others were concerned about McIntyre's condition and whether he was seriously injured. Medical personnel began gathering at ringside, their presence adding another layer of gravity to the situation. They watched closely, ready to intervene if the attack crossed from brutal to dangerous. But Orton wasn't done yet, not even close. He stood over McIntyre's prone body, looking down with that cold expression that reveals nothing about what he's thinking or feeling. The Viper has always been impossible to read, his face a mask even in the most heated moments. He stalked McIntyre like a predator circling wounded prey, measuring him up for what everyone knew was coming next. Orton had a signature that fans around the world recognized instantly, a finishing move that has ended countless matches and careers. The Viper pounded the mat with his fists, the signal that sent crowds into a frenzy every single time. The arena reached a fever pitch, the noise level becoming almost painful as thousands of fans reacted simultaneously. McIntyre slowly struggled to his feet, using every ounce of remaining strength to pull himself up via the ropes. He was clearly dazed, his eyes unfocused, his balance questionable. The Scottish Warrior had no idea where he was or what danger lurked behind him. He swayed on unsteady legs, trying to regain his bearings, trying to remember what he was supposed to be doing. The crowd tried to warn him with their screams, but McIntyre couldn't process the information fast enough. Orton struck with lightning speed, his movements so quick they almost seemed superhuman. He grabbed McIntyre from behind and delivered a picture-perfect RKO that echoed through the building like a gunshot. The sound of McIntyre's body hitting the canvas made people in the cheap seats flinch. The Scottish Warrior's head bounced off the mat and his entire body went limp, completely unconscious from the devastating impact. His arms and legs splayed out at unnatural angles, his eyes rolled back, his chest barely moving as he struggled to breathe. The arena fell into a stunned silence for just a moment before erupting into chaos. Fans were on their feet screaming, some in excitement, some in horror, all of them trying to process what they had just witnessed. This wasn't part of the scheduled match. This was Randy Orton inserting himself into a rivalry that didn't involve him, at least not publicly until this very moment. The questions flooded in immediately. Why did Orton target McIntyre? What did the Scottish Warrior do to earn the Viper's wrath? And most importantly, what happens next? Medical personnel rushed to the ring immediately, sliding under the bottom rope and surrounding McIntyre's motionless body. The match between Rhodes and McIntyre was officially called off, the bell ringing multiple times to signal the stoppage. Doctors attended to the Scottish Warrior with urgent efficiency, checking his responsiveness, his breathing, the movement in his extremities. The atmosphere had shifted from excitement to genuine concern as fans watched medical professionals work. Orton stood in the corner, watching the chaos he had created with that emotionless expression he's known for throughout his career. He showed no remorse, no second thoughts about what he had just done, no indication that he regretted his actions even slightly. This was a statement, a declaration that Randy Orton was back and he had Drew McIntyre in his sights for reasons that were about to become crystal clear to everyone watching. The Viper leaned against the turnbuckle, his arms crossed over his chest, looking almost bored as medical personnel frantically worked on his victim. This nonchalance was perhaps more disturbing than the violence itself. Orton had hurt people before, hundreds of them over his long career, and this was just another day at the office for him. The lack of emotion, the casual indifference to McIntyre's suffering, reminded everyone why Randy Orton has been called the Legend Killer, the Apex Predator, the Viper. These aren't just cool nicknames. They're warnings. Cody Rhodes stood in the opposite corner, still processing everything that had just transpired in front of him. He had been seconds away from potentially winning the entire match when Orton's interference changed everything in the blink of an eye. The American Nightmare looked at Orton, their eyes meeting across the ring. There was no confrontation between them, no words exchanged, but the tension was obvious to everyone watching. The air was thick with unspoken questions and possibilities. Rhodes didn't know if he should thank Orton for taking out his rival or be concerned that the Viper might turn his attention to him next. On one hand, McIntyre was neutralized, potentially out of action for weeks depending on the extent of his injuries. That meant one less obstacle in Cody's path. On the other hand, Randy Orton was unpredictable and dangerous, fully capable of targeting anyone at any time for any reason. The American Nightmare had to be wondering if he was next on Orton's hit list. The stare-down between Rhodes and Orton lasted for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds. Fans in the arena and watching at home held their breath, wondering if violence was about to erupt between these two as well. Would Orton attack Cody? Would Rhodes defend himself or strike first? The possibilities ran through everyone's minds at lightning speed. But the moment passed without incident as Orton simply smirked and turned his attention back to the medical personnel working on McIntyre. McIntyre had to be helped out of the ring by medical staff and additional personnel who had rushed down from backstage. He could barely stand on his own, his legs giving out multiple times as they tried to get him upright. The effects of both the grueling match with Rhodes and Orton's vicious attack had left the Scottish Warrior in terrible shape. His face was pale, his eyes barely open, his entire body trembling from shock and exhaustion. The stretcher was brought out and McIntyre was loaded onto it with careful precision, medical staff treating him like he might have serious neck or spine injuries. They secured his head with a brace, strapped his body to the board, and began wheeling him toward the back. The crowd gave him a respectful ovation for his effort throughout the match, chanting his name and showing appreciation for the punishment he'd endured. Despite being stretchered out, McIntyre's eyes were wide open now, the fog clearing enough for him to regain some awareness. He stared at Orton with pure rage burning in his eyes, a hatred so intense it was almost tangible. The Scottish Warrior mouthed something that the cameras couldn't quite pick up, but his lips formed words that were clearly threats or promises of revenge. The intent was absolutely clear to anyone watching. This wasn't over between him and the Viper. Not even close. If anything, this was just the beginning of something much bigger and more destructive. As McIntyre was wheeled up the ramp, Orton requested a microphone from the timekeeper. The arena fell silent, everyone eager to hear what the Viper had to say about his actions. Fans in attendance and watching around the world leaned forward, hanging on every moment. Orton took his time, letting the moment breathe, building the anticipation to almost unbearable levels. He paced the ring slowly, the microphone dangling from his hand, that infamous smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. He finally raised the microphone to his lips and began speaking in that measured, deliberate tone that has sent chills down spines for years. Orton addressed McIntyre directly even though the Scottish Warrior was no longer in the arena, explaining that what just happened was payback for disrespect shown weeks ago. The Viper's voice was calm, almost conversational, which made his words somehow more menacing than if he'd been screaming. Orton revealed that McIntyre had been running his mouth during Orton's absence, claiming he was better than the legend killer in every conceivable way. Drew had apparently told anyone who would listen that he had surpassed Orton, that the veteran's time had passed, that Randy was yesterday's news while McIntyre represented the future of WWE. Those comments didn't sit well with Randy, and tonight was his response to that disrespect. The Viper doesn't forgive and he certainly doesn't forget. Orton went into detail about specific things McIntyre had allegedly said, painting a picture of a younger star who had gotten too big for his britches. Whether these claims were entirely accurate or slightly exaggerated didn't matter. Orton was crafting a narrative, justifying his actions, making himself the wrong party who was simply defending his legacy. This was psychology at its finest, manipulating the audience's perception while simultaneously sending a message to everyone in the locker room. The Viper made it clear that this was just the beginning of McIntyre's nightmare. He wasn't satisfied with one attack, one RKO, one moment of violence. No, Orton wanted to systematically break down Drew McIntyre piece by piece until the Scottish Warrior understood exactly who he was dealing with. Orton's words were cold and calculated, delivered with the confidence of someone who has done this countless times before to countless opponents over his illustrious career. He spoke about his history, about the legends he had defeated and retired, about the championships he had won, about the respect he had earned through 2 decades of excellence. Orton reminded everyone that he has ended careers, destroyed legends, and humbled champions throughout his run in WWE. Names like The Undertaker, Mick Foley, and countless others were mentioned as proof of his ability to eliminate anyone he sets his sights on. McIntyre was just the latest name on a very long list, and his fate would be no different than those who came before him. The crowd reacted with a mixture of cheers and boos, some appreciating Orton's heel work while others rejected the arrogance and cruelty. But everyone was listening, everyone was engaged, everyone wanted to know what would happen next. This is what makes Randy Orton special. He can captivate an audience with just his words, no fancy effects or elaborate staging required. Just a man, a microphone, and the ability to make people believe every word he says. Orton then turned his attention to Cody Rhodes, who was still in the ring watching everything unfold. The tension between them was immediate and undeniable, the atmosphere shifting as the Viper's gaze locked onto the American Nightmare. Orton acknowledged that Rhodes had nothing to do with this situation, that his issue was solely with McIntyre and the disrespect shown during his absence. He gave Cody a out, a way to walk away from this situation without becoming collateral damage. But Orton also made it abundantly clear that if Cody decided to insert himself into this brewing war, if Rhodes chose to defend McIntyre or involve himself in any way, then the Viper would deal with the American Nightmare just as brutally as he was planning to deal with the Scottish Warrior. There would be no mercy, no hesitation, no second chances. Orton stared directly at Rhodes as he delivered this warning, making sure every word landed with maximum impact. Rhodes nodded slowly, processing the warning but not backing down or showing fear. The American Nightmare is many things but a coward isn't one of them. He stood his ground, returning Orton's stare with equal intensity, silently communicating that he wasn't intimidated. The stare down between them lasted several long seconds, the crowd buzzing with anticipation, wondering if these two would come to blows right then and there. But Orton simply smirked again, that infuriating expression that says he knows something you don't. He dropped the microphone, letting it crash to the canvas with a loud thud that echoed through the sound system. The Viper then exited the ring, sliding under the bottom rope and backing up the ramp while keeping his eyes on Rhodes the entire time. He wanted to make sure Cody didn't try anything stupid, didn't attempt a sneak attack or moment of revenge for the chaos caused. Rhodes was left alone in the ring to contemplate what had just happened and what it meant for his immediate future. The American Nightmare stood in the center of the canvas, his expression unreadable, his mind clearly racing through the implications. His match with McIntyre had been ruined, their rivalry left unresolved. Now Randy Orton had inserted himself into the situation, creating a volatile three-way dynamic that could explode at any moment. The fallout from this incident has been enormous in the hours and days since. Social media exploded with reactions from fans, fellow wrestlers, and analysts trying to make sense of Orton's motives and what this means for the SmackDown roster moving forward. Twitter, Instagram, and other platforms were flooded with clips of the attack, slow-motion replays of the RKO, and heated debates about whether Orton was justified or if he crossed a line. Drew McIntyre has been vocal since the attack despite his injuries, demanding a match with Orton at the next Premium Live event. The Scottish Warrior posted several messages on social media, his anger evident in every word. He wants revenge and he wants it in a sanctioned match where he can legally punish the Viper for what happened. McIntyre made it clear that he's not backing down, not hiding, not waiting for his body to fully heal. He wants Orton now, consequences be damned. WWE officials are reportedly considering the match, understanding that the heat between these two men is real and the fans are desperate to see them settle their differences inside the ring. Multiple sources have indicated that conversations are happening at the highest levels of the company about how to book this feud. The potential is obvious. Two main event caliber performers with legitimate chemistry and a story that writes itself. The challenge is making sure they execute it properly and give fans the payoff they deserve. Cody Rhodes finds himself in an interesting position that very few wrestlers ever experience. His match with McIntyre ended without a definitive winner, meaning their rivalry technically isn't resolved. There's unfinished business that demands attention. But with Orton now targeting McIntyre, does Cody pursue the Scottish Warrior or does he focus on other challenges? Does he insert himself into the Orton vs. McIntyre situation or does he stay in his lane and let them destroy each other? The American Nightmare has been on an incredible run since returning to WWE, capturing championships and main eventing major shows. He's proven himself as one of the top stars in the entire industry. He doesn't need to involve himself in the Orton and McIntyre situation to remain relevant or important, but the competitive fire that burns inside him might not allow him to simply walk away from unfinished business with Drew McIntyre. That's not who Cody Rhodes is as a competitor or as a man. Behind the scenes, reports suggest that WWE Creative has big plans for this storyline that extend well into the future. The company sees huge potential in an Orton vs. McIntyre feud, especially with both men being established main event players with strong fan support. There's talk of this rivalry extending through multiple pay-per-view events, possibly culminating in a specialty match like Hell in a Cell or a Last Man Standing match at one of the major shows. The creative team wants to give these two all the time and resources they need to deliver something special for the audience. That means proper build, meaningful segments, and matches that actually matter. WWE has been criticized in recent years for rushing through storylines or not giving feuds enough time to breathe. With Orton and McIntyre, they seem committed to doing things right and creating something fans will remember for years to come. Randy Orton's return couldn't have come at a better time for SmackDown from a creative standpoint. The blue brand has been stacked with talent but needed a fresh storyline to shake things up heading into the next major event cycle. Ratings have been solid but not spectacular, and the show needed something to generate buzz and get people talking. Orton vs. McIntyre provides exactly that, a feud built on legitimate tension with two performers who are among the best in-ring workers in the entire company. Their styles complement each other perfectly, with McIntyre's power-based defense contrasting beautifully with Orton's technical precision and mind games. Drew likes to overpower opponents, using his superior strength and size to dominate. Orton prefers to outsmart people, setting traps and exploiting weaknesses with surgical precision. When these two approaches clash, the result is typically something special that elevates everyone involved. The attack also raises questions about where Orton's head is at this stage of his career and what drives him now. The Viper has evolved over the years, transitioning from the cocky young upstart who formed Evolution with Triple H and Ric Flair to the methodical veteran who picks his spots carefully. His return wasn't random or impulsive. He targeted McIntyre specifically for a reason, and that kind of focus makes him even more dangerous now than he was in his younger years. Orton doesn't need to wrestle every week or cut promos constantly to remain relevant. He appears when he wants, strikes when it benefits him, and disappears before anyone can mount a proper defense. That unpredictability makes him one of the most compelling characters on the roster. You never know when Randy Orton might show up or who he might target next. That element of surprise keeps fans engaged and constantly guessing. Drew McIntyre's response will be crucial in determining how this feud develops and whether it reaches its full potential. The Scottish Warrior has proven time and again that he doesn't back down from anyone regardless of their reputation or accomplishments. He's faced and defeated some of the biggest names in WWE history, including Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and countless others. Being attacked by Orton won't scare him or make him hesitant. If anything, it will fuel his fire and make him even more determined. McIntyre thrives when he has a personal grudge to settle, when someone has wronged him and needs to be punished. Some of his best work has come when he's fighting for revenge or defending his honor. Orton just gave him the ultimate motivation by attacking him when he was vulnerable, ruining his match with Rhodes, and disrespecting him in front of the entire world. The Scottish Warrior now has every reason to make Randy Orton's life absolutely miserable. The WWE Universe is divided on who to support in this conflict, which is perfect for generating interest and engagement. Orton has legions of fans who have followed his career since his Evolution days and appreciate his consistency and star power over 2 decades. These fans remember his classic matches, his championship reigns, and his ability to reinvent himself multiple times while remaining relevant. They see him as a legend who deserves respect. McIntyre has built a massive following through his incredible comeback story, going from being released by WWE to becoming one of the company's most reliable top stars and a WWE champion. His journey resonates with people who love an underdog story, who appreciate someone who worked their way back from the bottom. Fans admire his work ethic, his passion, and his authenticity. Both men have legitimate claims to being the face of SmackDown, and watching them collide is going to be appointment viewing. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you never miss an update on this developing story, because things are about to get even more intense in the coming weeks and you're going to want to be part of this journey from start to finish.